The Galactic Council chamber was a breathtaking sight, a vast expanse of polished obsidian floors, towering crystal columns, and suspended light spheres that glowed with the energy of 1,000 suns. But today the beauty of the chamber was marred by tension, so thick it felt like static in the air. Delegates from over 100 species, fleshy, scaled, crystalline, and more, were crammed into the circular hall, all eyes trained on the elevated podium. Here, Ambassador Jontaro Keth stood, his silver-blue skin rippling like liquid metal under the artificial sun that hung above. "Delegates," Keth began, his voice amplified by the chamber's resonating acoustics, "today we address a crisis unlike any our galaxy has faced." The crowd murmured. Crises were a dime a dozen in the Galactic Council, ranging from interstellar wars to rogue AI uprisings. But the flickering hologram behind Keth showed something altogether unexpected: a human cheeseburger, its layers of meat and cheese glistening with grease, its bun dotted with seeds like tiny planets. "Human foodstuffs," Keth continued, "have become a threat to our very existence. We have received thousands of complaints from across the galaxy," he gestured, and the hologram changed to display images of aliens writhing in apparent agony. Spicy condiments triggering molecular combustion, caffeine causing uncontrollable hyperactivity, and worst of all, Keth's expression darkened the incident on Vesnar 3, where a single sugar explosion incapacitated an entire colony for 3 weeks. Ambassador Azaruf of the Ezerix, a crystalline species that shimmered in iridescent hues, vibrated with fury. His people had petitioned to ban human spices after a cultural exchange involving cayenne peppers led to a widespread crystallization event. "My people suffered gravely," as Azaruf's voice cut through the murmurs, high-pitched and ringing. 3 weeks as immobile crystals. This so-called mild heat nearly wiped out our entire government. On the other side of the chamber, the Glortak representative, a gelatinous being whose core pulsed with light, added their complaint. "Your sugared confections caused our young to undergo spontaneous metamorphosis. Twice." Amidst the growing clamor, Ambassador Rashar Verdin rose to speak. Humanity's representative was a tall man with prematurely gray hair, sharp eyes, and a demeanor that suggested he had seen too many of these assemblies. He adjusted the cuffs of his diplomatic jacket with deliberate calm, then stepped forward, his expression betraying only a hint of exasperation. "Esteemed delegates," Verdin said, spreading his hands in a gesture of placation, "I believe there may be some misunderstandings." "Misunderstandings," the Glortak delegate, Zil, interrupted. His gelatinous form trembled, and his core flashed red. "You mean to say that my people hallucinating for days after consuming your coffee was a misunderstanding?" The tension broke slightly as a few delegates snickered, though the laughter was quickly suppressed. Verdin maintained his composure, though a faint smile tugged at the corners of his mouth. "Ambassador Xil, what you describe is known to humans as caffeine sensitivity. It is rare and usually harmless." Enough. Keth raised his metallic hand, and the chamber fell silent once more. "The evidence is clear. Human foods are unpredictable, dangerous, and destabilizing to our society. Effective immediately, all trade, distribution, and consumption of human culinary items are banned within council-regulated sectors." The chamber erupted. Cries of outrage mingled with cheers of approval. The translucent voting screen blinked into existence, tallying the delegates' votes at dizzying speed. Verdin tried to protest, but his voice was drowned out. When the tally ended, the results were clear: 100% in favor of the ban. Even Verdin's vote had been overridden. The gavel slammed down with a deafening thud, marking the end of human food as a legal commodity. News of the ban spread faster than light itself, reverberating through the galaxy. Markets shut down overnight. Restaurants with human-inspired menus were raided by armored patrols. Storerooms of spices, sauces, and mysterious snack cakes were seized and incinerated. The Galactic Council's newly established Interstellar Food Compliance Agency, IFGA, began enforcing the law with brutal efficiency, making examples of any who dared defy the ban. But for every public crackdown, there were whispers. Whispers of rebellion. Whispers of opportunity. On the edge of the Terrabex system, in the dusty expanse of Orban Outpost, Marcus Kell leaned against a metal crate stamped with nutritional supplements. "Handle with care." The soft breeze carried the scent of engine grease and metal, blending with a faint, tantalizing aroma of roasted spices that lingered on his clothing. The freighter Wayfarer's Wind, a battered but reliable ship, loomed behind him, its hull scarred from past skirmishes and close calls. Marcus looked every inch the rogue trader unshaven, with a roguish smile and eyes that never stopped moving. He flicked a steel straw between his fingers, watching the comings and goings of other traders. He felt the weight of the ban, but there was no fear in him, only anticipation. "So, it's really happened," came a familiar voice. Jetta Vinn, his co-pilot and partner in crime, emerged from the shadows of the ship's ramp, her dark eyes catching the light. She was lean, quick, and always seemed a step ahead of everyone else. The council banned it all. Marcus grinned, the kind of grin that got him into trouble and out of it in equal measure. "Yep, every last crumb, drop, and grain. We're officially outlaws now, Jetta." "Outlaws with spice," she replied, a glint of excitement crossing her face. She moved closer, her voice dropping. "Do they really think people are just going to stop? That they'll just give up human food?" Marcus pushed himself off the crate, his boots hitting the metal deck with a solid thud. "Of course not. That's why we're about to make a killing," he gestured to the cargo hold behind him, filled with crates of spices, sauces, and preserved delicacies smuggled from Earth. "We have the last unbanned stock, and it's about to become the galaxy's hottest commodity." The ban had the opposite effect of what the council intended. Human food became a symbol of defiance, a taste of rebellion. Smugglers, traders, and underground chefs capitalized on the newfound demand, moving shipments through secret routes, hidden compartments, and daring maneuvers. A jar of genuine hot sauce was now worth its weight in precious metals, and a shipment of chocolate could spark bidding wars in the black market. Marcus and Jetta thrived in this chaos. They weren't just smugglers, they were trailblazers in the culinary underground. Their success was born of quick thinking, fast ships, and a willingness to take risks. Every delivery carried new dangers: council patrols, rival smugglers, and the ever-present threat of betrayal. One evening, as they prepared for a delivery to the Moravian cluster, Marcus received an encrypted message on his comlink. It was from Rom, a Veltrixian merchant known for his love of Earth sweets. Urgent request, the message read. Payment guaranteed. Meet at Galactic Station. Marcus's instincts told him it was a trap, but the promise of a payday was too tempting to ignore. The meeting took place in a dimly lit tavern on Galactic Station, a warren of metal corridors and flickering lights. The scent of grilled meats and simmering broths filled the air, though none of it was human. Marcus leaned over a wooden table, his gaze steady. 20 credits per ounce, he said, sliding a small glass vial of powdered spice across the table. "Take it or leave it." The buyer, a green-scaled merchant named Phoenix, recoiled. 20? Last week, it was 10. "Last week, it wasn't illegal," Marcus replied smoothly. "Supplies limited now, and you won't find quality like this anywhere else." Phoenix's tongue flicked nervously, then he slammed a credit sheet onto the table. "You humans and your arrogance." "Comes with the spices," Marcus said with a grin. He pocketed the payment and stood, giving Jetta, who was watching from the bar, a subtle nod. They moved quickly, blending into the crowd. Smugglers didn't last long by standing out, even in a place like this. Outside, under the station's artificial stars, Jetta caught up to him. "Phoenix was right," she said, her tone serious. "This market's going to explode, and when it does, we'll be on everyone's radar." Marcus's smile faded slightly. "I know. And you're still in." He stopped, turning to face her. "Jetta, this isn't just about the credits. The ban is absurd. Food is culture. It brings people together. They're afraid of that." She nodded slowly, understanding. "All right, but you know this is going to get ugly. The council won't let this slide." "They already started it," Marcus said, a hint of steel in his voice. "We just need to stay one step ahead." As they approached the Wayfarer's Wind, Marcus's comlink buzzed with another encrypted message. This one promised a fortune for a rare sweet delicacy. He felt the weight of the coming storm but pushed it aside. The galaxy had drawn its line, and he'd crossed it willingly, cargo hold full of spices and a mission burning as hot as any flame. The Council's ban had the effect of throwing dry leaves onto a smoldering flame. What should have extinguished curiosity only fueled it. In the weeks following the vote, the galaxy buzzed with whispers of hidden spice markets, clandestine exchanges, and daring smugglers defying the might of the Galactic Council. Tales spread like wildfire of alien nobility risking ruin for a taste of forbidden chocolate, of warriors ingesting human pepper powders before battle, and of elite gatherings where hot sauce flowed as freely as illicit wine. Amidst this growing turmoil, Marcus Kell and Jetta Vinn thrived. Their freighter, the Wayfarer's Wind, became a symbol of hope or infamy, depending on whom you asked. But their success came with a price. Their faces were plastered on council-wanted bulletins, and patrols grew increasingly aggressive in their attempts to shut them down. It was during one of these high-risk runs, while skirting the edges of the Moravian Nebula, that Marcus and Jetta encountered their first serious brush with disaster. They were ferrying a shipment of ghost peppers, a potent spice that had become legendary among certain thrill-seeking species. The freighter glided through the swirling mists of the nebula, its stealth system straining against interference. Jetta was at the helm, her fingers dancing over the controls. "The route should take us clear of any patrols," she murmured, her eyes flicking between readouts. "No one likes flying blind through a nebula." "That's what I'm counting on," Marcus replied, pacing the narrow corridor that doubled as their cargo hold. He checked the magnetic seals on the crates one last time. Even sealed, the peppers emitted a faint, eye-watering heat. Suddenly the ship's alarms blared. "Incoming!" Jetta shouted, gripping the controls as a council patrol ship emerged from the nebula's shifting mists. Its sleek, armored hull bristled with weaponry. Marcus's jaw clenched. "They must have a scout drone tailing us." "No time to worry about that now," Jetta barked, throwing the Wayfarer's Wind into a tight barrel roll to evade the incoming fire. Plasma bolts streaked past the cockpit, illuminating the swirling gas outside in brilliant flashes of green and blue. The patrol ship was faster and better armed, but Marcus and Jetta had a different kind of advantage: desperation and cunning honed by years on the run. Jetta pushed the engines to their limit, weaving through dense pockets of nebula gas. The patrol ship pursued, firing relentlessly. "Got any bright ideas?" Jetta shouted, sweat beading on her forehead. "Just one," Marcus said grimly. He grabbed a metal canister marked "Caution Extreme Heat" and hurried to the cargo bay airlock. "Keep us steady." She groaned but complied, leveling the ship just long enough for Marcus to load the canister into the airlock chamber. "If this doesn't work, I'm going to haunt you," she muttered. Marcus grinned, despite the situation. "If this doesn't work, I'll be right there with you." He vented the airlock, releasing the canister into the nebula. The canister detonated a second later, unleashing a concentrated cloud of ghost pepper dust. The patrol ship's sensors detected the sudden chemical spike too late, but as it powered through the gas, its crew was overwhelmed. Marcus imagined the chaos on board: non-humans choking, panicking, and experiencing the infamous burn of human spice. The patrol ship spun wildly before retreating, its systems compromised. Back in the cockpit, Marcus slumped into a chair. "One for the books," he said, still catching his breath. Jetta gave him a wry smile. "Remind me never to cook with that stuff." The victory was short-lived. The Council's pursuit only intensified, and rumors reached Marcus and Jetta that their exploits had attracted more than just enforcers. Rival smugglers, angered by their success, were closing in. Chief among them was Vinn, a Gaussian known for his ruthlessness and cunning. Vinn operated a sprawling network of informants and mercenaries, and he had a particular vendetta against Marcus for outmaneuvering him on a lucrative spice deal. The showdown came to a head on Galactic Station. Marcus and Jetta had arranged to meet with Rom, a Veltrixian merchant with a taste for Earth sweets. The station, built into the hollowed-out remains of a long-dead asteroid, was a warren of metal corridors and flickering lights, a perfect place for a deal or an ambush. They met Rom in a dimly lit alcove. The Veltrixian, with his wide eyes and quick movements, seemed jittery even for his kind. "You brought the delicacy?" he asked, glancing nervously over his shoulder. Marcus tapped the case he carried. "Top-shelf chocolate. Just like you asked." But before Rom could respond, a voice oozing with malice interrupted. "Ah, Kell, I thought I smelled desperation." Marcus turned to see Vinn standing in the entrance, flanked by a half-dozen thugs. Bogosian's scales glistened in the low light, and his sharp teeth were bared in what passed for a smile. "You've been busy," Vinn continued, stepping forward. "I'm making waves. Treading on my territory." "Didn't know the entire galaxy was yours," Marcus shot back, his voice calm but his muscles tensed. "It is when it comes to human spice," Vinn hissed. "You've been cutting into my profits." "You mean the watered-down garbage you sell?" Jetta interjected, stepping up beside Marcus. "People aren't that stupid, Vinn." The smile vanished from Vrinn's face. "You've made enemies, Kell. This ends now." Rom bolted and chaos erupted. Blaster fire crackled through the narrow space as Marcus and Jetta ducked for cover. They returned fire, their movements precise and desperate. Vrinn's thugs were well trained, but they underestimated the pair's resolve. One by one, the attackers fell. In the aftermath, Vinn, injured but still alive, sneered at Marcus. "You can't fight everyone. The Council. They'll crush you." "We'll see about that," Marcus said coldly. He didn't relish leaving Vinn alive, but killing him would only deepen the cycle of violence. He turned away, signaling Jetta to follow. Word of the confrontation spread quickly, cementing Marcus and Jetta's reputation. The underground saw them not just as smugglers, but as leaders in a growing rebellion against the Council's oppression. But with fame came new dangers. One evening, as Marcus was inspecting cargo in their hidden outpost, a remote asteroid base hidden in the Terrabex system, an unexpected visitor arrived. The airlock hissed open, revealing a towering reptilian warrior with emerald scales that caught the dim light. "I am Savoric, first spear of the Vrelon militia," the newcomer announced. His voice was low, rough, and carried a dangerous edge. "We have need of your expertise." Marcus crossed his arms, eyeing the imposing figure warily. "We don't deal with militias." "This is no ordinary request," Savoric said, stepping closer. "You have what we need. Human spice." Marcus arched an eyebrow. "Why?" "It sharpens the senses," Savoric explained. "Heightens awareness. Our warriors will be unmatched." The implications were troubling. "You want to use it as a weapon." "We want to survive," Savoric countered, his eyes blazing. "The Council has left us no choice." It was a dangerous proposition, but Marcus knew one thing: if they refused, the Vrelon militia would find someone else, someone less principled. "We'll think about it," he said finally. "Do not take too long," Savoric warned. "Others are watching." The underground market was becoming a battlefield, with Marcus and Jetta caught in the middle. The Council's ban had done more than restrict human food; it had ignited a conflict that threatened to consume the galaxy. And as they prepared for what lay ahead, Marcus knew that every decision, every shipment, and every deal would bring them closer to the brink. The lines between smugglers, rebels, and outright warlords had begun to blur. The Galactic Council's ban on human foods had created fractures within its own ranks, and Marcus, Kell, and Jetta Vinn found themselves at the center of a storm they had never intended to create. What had started as a series of high-risk runs to supply forbidden spices and delicacies had become a struggle for control over a market worth more than credits. It was now a fight for influence and survival. The Wayfarer's wind touched down gently on the landing pad of a hidden base nestled within the hollowed core of a drifting asteroid. Marcus stepped out, his senses immediately assaulted by the heady aroma of roasting spices and sizzling meats. The base, known simply as Emberhold, was an underground stronghold for smugglers, rogue chefs, and traders who thrived on the banned human cuisine trade. Dim lights flickered overhead, casting long shadows across makeshift market stalls and tables laden with all manner of culinary contraband. Jetta exited the ship beside him, adjusting her blaster belt. "It's getting crowded here," she muttered, scanning the bustling market with a wary eye. "Too many new faces." "They're here because they think it's safer than running alone," Marcus replied. "But you're right. Too many people makes us a target." As if to punctuate his words, a loud commotion erupted near one of the stalls. A burly Yorick trader was waving a jar of hot sauce in one hand, while a small insectoid being skittered back defensively, You call this hot? The Yorick bellowed, his thick arms flexing. I've tasted water that's hotter. Marcus sighed. Trouble, already. Jetta snorted. This place is a powder keg. It was only a matter of time. She was right. Emberhold was becoming a dangerous mix of ambition and desperation. The rise in demand for human spices had attracted factions with their own agendas, exiled nobles, rogue militias, and even disgraced council officials. Most came seeking profit. A few sought power. All were willing to fight for it. Marcus moved to intervene, but before he could reach the squabbling pair, a loud voice boomed from above. Enough the speaker was Pellis, an insectoid gourmand whose passion for human sweets had made him a legend, and more importantly, the de facto leader of Emberhold. His mandibles clicked as he descended a metal staircase, his multifaceted eyes glinting. We are here to trade, not brawl like uncivilized brutes. The Yorick glared but backed down, grumbling. The tension eased, and Marcus used the opportunity to approach Pellis. Nice timing. Pellis's mandibles twitched in what passed for a smile. You owe me a favor for maintaining peace, Kell. I'm sure you'll collect, Marcus said dryly. Speaking of which, Pellis continued, lowering his voice. Rumors are spreading fast. The council's stepping up their operations. They've deployed new patrols, and there's talk of a dedicated task force aimed at cutting off our supply lines. I hear they've even captured a few smugglers for interrogation. Jetta's jaw tightened. We need to move carefully. There's more, Pellis added, his antennae twitching nervously. Vren's network is expanding. He's been making deals with some of the less discerning elements in the underground. Marcus cursed under his breath. Vren had been a thorn in their side for too long, and his willingness to compromise quality for profit was causing problems. The diluted spices he pushed on the market were not only dangerous but tarnished the reputation of all smugglers dealing in human foods. And now, if he was consolidating power, it spelled even more trouble. We'll deal with Vren, Marcus promised. But first, we need to disrupt the council's new operations. You have a plan? Jetta asked, crossing her arms. Marcus nodded. We hit their supply chain. They're moving confiscated spices and delicacies to a central depot for incineration. If we intercept one of their convoys, we can undermine their control and boost our own stock. Ambitious, Pellis said, his mandibles clicking. But dangerous. I didn't sign up for a safe life, Marcus replied. He met Jetta's eyes. Are you in? She smirked. Always. The plan was bold: intercept a heavily guarded convoy transporting a cache of confiscated human food. Intel suggested that the convoy would make a stop at a remote fueling station on the edge of the Livrous Belt, a hazardous region of floating debris and magnetic storms. Marcus, Jetta, and their small crew of loyalists prepared meticulously. Timing would be everything. The Wayfarer's wind lurked among the asteroids, its engines powered down to avoid detection. Jetta monitored the scanner, her face illuminated by the dim glow of the controls. Convoys on approach, she whispered. 2 escort ships, heavily armed. Got it, Marcus said, tightening his grip on the flight controls. Lyria, you ready? Standing by crackled the voice of their engineer. Lyria was hidden in a nearby asteroid field, ready to disrupt the convoy's sensors with a well-timed electromagnetic pulse. Now, Marcus ordered. A pulse wave rippled through space, scrambling the escort ship's systems. The convoy's formation broke as the escorts struggled to regain control. The Wayfarer's wind roared to life, streaking toward the lead freighter. Boarding clamps engaged, Jetta reported as the freighter came into view. They docked, and Marcus led the charge into the freighter's hold. The resistance was fierce. Council enforcers fought with discipline and precision. Blaster fire filled the air, sparks and smoke creating a chaotic battlefield. Marcus moved with practiced efficiency, taking cover and firing in quick bursts. Secure the cargo, he shouted over the din. Jetta and Lyria worked quickly, prying open crates filled with spices, sauces, and rare earth delicacies. But as they moved to extract the cargo, the freighter shuddered violently. Reinforcements, Lyria warned, her eyes wide. We've got incoming. Marcus cursed. Jetta, we need to move. Before they could retreat, a massive explosion rocked the freighter. The impact sent Marcus sprawling. His ears rang and his vision blurred. When he regained his bearings, he saw a figure standing over him, tall, armored, and familiar. It was Scifistories, the Vrellan warrior who had sought their aid. But he was not here as an ally. You interfere with Vrellan business, Scifistories growled, his eyes blazing. Marcus pushed himself to his feet. What the hell is this, Scifistories? We had an understanding. Your meddling threatens our plans, Scifistories said coldly. The council must remain occupied with their own problems, not ours. Realization dawned. The Vrellan militia was using the council's crackdown as a smokescreen for their own agenda. Marcus's interference threatened to expose them. We're taking this cargo, Marcus said, his voice steady despite the danger. Scifistories raised a clawed hand. Not today. The two clashed in a brutal, desperate fight. Scifistories was stronger, but Marcus had desperation and experience on his side. Blows were exchanged, and for a moment it seemed hopeless. But Jetta intervened, firing a stun bolt that sent Scifistories crashing to the deck. We have to go, she shouted. Reluctantly, Marcus retreated. They barely escaped with their lives and a fraction of the cargo. As the wayfarers' wind sped away, Marcus knew that their situation had become far more complex. The Vrellan militia, the council, Vren's network enemies were closing in from every side. Back at Emberhold, the atmosphere was tense. Marcus stood before the gathered smugglers, his face bruised but resolute. The council won't stop. The Vrellan have their own plans. If we're going to survive, we need to stand together. Pellis nodded, his mandibles clicking. Then we fight. Together. It was the start of something larger, a secret war fought with spices, smuggling runs, and desperate alliances. The stakes were higher than ever, but Marcus knew one thing for certain: they were not alone. And as long as they had each other and the fire of rebellion in their hearts, their fight would go on. Emberhold was buzzing with energy like a tightly coiled spring, ready to snap. The council's crackdown on human food smugglers had reached fever pitch. Raids were conducted daily, shipments were confiscated, and entire sectors were placed under strict surveillance. For Marcus, Kell, Jetta, Vinn, and their ragtag coalition of smugglers, every move became a matter of life and death. And yet, despite the dangers, there was defiance in the air, a simmering rebellion waiting to boil over. In a darkened chamber carved into the asteroid base, Marcus stood at the head of a rough-hewn table surrounded by his closest allies. The tension in the room was palpable. Jetta leaned back in her chair, arms crossed and eyes narrowed in thought. Pellis clicked his mandibles nervously, while Lyria and Nessa exchanged tense glances. Marcus spread a star chart across the table, its holographic display flickering as it projected the known movements of the Galactic Council's task force. They've consolidated their forces here, he said, pointing to a cluster of red dots hovering over Orios Prime, the political heart of the Council. Every confiscated shipment, every piece of contraband, it all ends up there. Jetta tilted her head, her eyes gleaming with intrigue. So that's where we hit them. It's more than a stockpile, Marcus continued, his voice steady but grim. It's a symbol of their control. Destroying it won't just hurt their supply chain, it'll show the galaxy that the Council's stranglehold can be broken. Pellis's antennae twitched nervously. You speak of open war, Kell. It's already a war, Marcus replied, his tone hard. They made it one when they started hunting us down. We can't keep playing defense. Jetta nodded. I'm in. The others murmured their agreement. But before they could discuss details, a soft chime interrupted them, an incoming transmission. Lyria quickly patched it through. The hologram flickered to life, revealing a familiar reptilian face. Scifistories, the Vrellan warrior who had betrayed them, stared back with narrowed eyes. Marcus, Kell, he hissed, his voice low and dangerous. We need to talk. Marcus's fists clenched. You've got some nerve. The Vrellan militia has no interest in your petty rebellion, Scifistories said coldly. But recent developments have forced our hand. What developments? Jetta asked, her fingers hovering near her blaster. The council knows, Scifistories replied, his eyes glinting with fury. They know of our attempts to use human spices. They intend to wipe us out. We have a common enemy. Marcus exchanged a glance with Jetta. The Vrellan militia had their own agenda, but if Savoric's words were true, an alliance, however temporary, could be the key to turning the tide. Why should we trust you? Marcus demanded. You don't have to trust me, Savoric replied, his tone dark. But know this, if we fail to break the Council's grip, none of us will survive. I offer you strength in battle. There was a long, tense silence. Finally, Marcus nodded. We'll talk terms. But if you betray us again, I'll finish what Jetta started. Savoric's lips curled into what might have been a smile. Understood. The plan they crafted was audacious, a coordinated assault on Oreos Prime's central depot. While Marcus, Jetta, and their allies infiltrated the depot to destroy the stockpile of confiscated human food, Savoric and the Vrellan militia would lead a diversionary attack on the main gates, drawing the bulk of the Council's forces away. Success would strike a blow not just against the ban, but against the Council's very legitimacy. On the eve of the mission, Emberhold was alive with activity. Weapons were loaded, ships prepped for launch, and final preparations made. In the dim light of their makeshift barracks, Marcus found a quiet moment with Jetta. You know this might be it, she said, her voice soft but unwavering. We might not come back. I know. Marcus's gaze met hers. But we have to try. A long silence stretched between them before Jetta spoke again, a faint smile playing on her lips. Just promise me one thing. Anything. No more ghost pepper clouds. Marcus laughed, the sound bitter and fleeting. Deal. The assault on Oreos Prime began at dawn, when the station's defenses were least prepared for a direct attack. The Vrellan militia struck first, their ships raining fire upon the Council's outer defenses. Alarm klaxons blared, and within moments, the once orderly depot was thrown into chaos. Enforcers scrambled to repel the attackers, unaware of the true threat lurking within their walls. The Wayfarer's wind slipped through the chaos, its cloaking system straining as it neared the depot's rear access hatch. Marcus led the infiltration team, with Jetta, Lyria, Nessa, and Pellis by his side. They moved quickly, disabling guards and bypassing security systems. The air was thick with tension, every step felt like walking a tightrope over an abyss. They reached the central storage chamber, a massive vault containing row upon row of crates. The air was heavy with the scent of spices and preserved earth delicacies. Marcus could almost taste the bittersweet victory, but they weren't done yet. Lyria rigged the charges Marcus ordered. The engineer nodded, her hands moving with practiced precision. But before she could finish, an explosion rocked the chamber, sending them all sprawling. The doors burst open, and a wave of enforcers poured in, blasters blazing. Ambush, Jetta shouted, rolling to cover and returning fire. Marcus's heart pounded. They'd been expected. Fall back, he yelled, but retreating wasn't an option. Enforcers closed in from all sides, pinning them down. Pellis was hit, his chitinous armor cracking. Lyria fired desperately, her eyes wild with fear. We need another way out, Marcus shouted, scanning the room for options. A familiar, menacing form stepped into view. Ambassador Jontaro Keth, his silver-blue skin gleaming, regarded them with cold satisfaction. Did you think we wouldn't see through your pitiful rebellion? Go to hell, Marcus spat. Keth smiled, a cruel, mocking expression. You humans are so predictable, always playing with fire. The enforcers advanced, but before they could reach the team, another explosion rocked the depot, this one from outside. Savoric and the Vrellan militia had breached the gates, cutting through the enforcers with ruthless efficiency. The tide of battle shifted once more. Amidst the chaos, Marcus lunged for Keth. The two clashed, trading blows in a brutal, desperate fight. Keth was faster, stronger, but Marcus fought with the strength of a man who had nothing left to lose. He ducked under a swing and drove his shoulder into Keth's midsection, knocking the ambassador off balance. Lyria, Marcus shouted, "Now!" The charges detonated, and the room erupted in a cascade of fire and smoke. Crates shattered, releasing their precious cargo into the inferno. Spices ignited, filling the air with a burning heat that overwhelmed friend and foe alike. Keth staggered, his face twisted in fury. You think this changes anything? He hissed. It changes everything, Marcus replied. He drove his fist into Keth's jaw, sending the ambassador crashing to the floor. Then, with the depot crumbling around them, Marcus and his team retreated, fighting every step of the way. In the aftermath of the battle, the galaxy was forever changed. News of the raid spread like wildfire, igniting protests and rebellions on countless worlds. The Council, weakened and exposed, was forced to lift the ban on human foods. But restrictions remained, but the stranglehold was broken. For Marcus, Jetta, and their allies, there was no rest. They were legends, now symbols of defiance and hope. But as they stood together aboard the Wayfarer's Wind, preparing for the next challenge, they knew one thing for certain: the fight was far from over. Ready for the next adventure? Jetta asked, a hint of a smile on her lips. Always, Marcus replied. And together, they stepped into the stars, ready to face whatever came next.